Hi, folks. I'm Father Joe Grimaldi. You can call me Joe, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast. But now, here's our host and friend, Ken Calvert.
I'm with Father Joe Grimaldi, and oh boy, look outside. It's snowing, and man, oh man, am I in a good mood. Oh, wait a minute, let me rethink that. Let me just tell you, no, I'm not in a good mood. This is kind of a dark, dank time of year for everyone, isn't it?
It is, certainly is. Yeah.
All right, so you say Mass each and every day, sometimes twice, 3 times a day.
Right.
You got to keep the masses motivated, right?
Correct.
What are we talking about in church just on a regular basis? For example, what did you talk about today?
Well, it's interesting because we talked about David and Bathsheba, the effects of sin having a ripple effect. So whenever we commit a sin, I'm talking about sin, okay?
All right.
It's a ripple effect. It's not something that's just personal.
How many people actually pay attention to the homily as opposed to just going because of the fact that they get great comfort from going to church?
I think you have a healthy portion of both. You certainly do have people after Mass asking about what did you mean by this or what did you mean by that. I got a little upset the other day with one of the people who was in the church. He was obviously somebody I hadn't seen before. So after Mass, he said to me, "Hey, that was a nice Frank Sinatra Mass." I started thinking, but I couldn't get a hold of him to have him explain what he meant. The only thing I could think of, he was not used to a daily Mass where there's the organ, there is singing, the people do sing at St. Hugo's, there is the singing dialogue that occurs between the priest and the church, and so on. He was not used to that, and so his only way of expressing it was, he said, that was a nice Frank Sinatra Mass.
Is it possible that people just come to church each and every day because they feel like it's a part of their purpose to start the day in the right way? Like align myself with what is best for me, and for me to sort of free myself from the darkness of a cold January day, for me to get past all of the peripheral things that are out there distracting me. Do you think people may want to start their day with a bowl of Cheerios, a cup of coffee, a glass of orange juice, and a damn good Mass?
I think you got it. I think a lot of people do that. There's no question. I don't think they ever say it directly, but indirectly.
or my way.
But I mean, you made it very clear, and that's true of a lot of people. It's part of their ritual. It's part of their ritual to sit and stand and kneel. And I always say to them, please try to understand what you're doing. Otherwise, it's meaningless. You're just going through the motions. There's no reason for you to be here if you're just going to be here.
But it's a sacrifice for them to be there.
It is, but it's a sacrifice that helps them along in their... They have something in their mind, a schedule in their mind that they have to fulfill. It's like the person that always has to sit in the same seat every day.
Well, you've talked about this before.
Yeah.
That's borderline superstitious.
It is.
And that's not good.
That's not good. So if it's real devotion, you're going there for the devotion of the Mass. One of the things I'm very conscious of is trying to make the Mass as personal as possible for the people so that they do listen if you make it personal. Maybe they're not going to catch every word, but they listen much more if it is you're speaking to them. And how do you do that? Eye contact is very important. You can't speak like this and hope to get results. So you have to have eye contact. Now, you can't have eye contact with everybody in the church, but you can move around so that people begin to feel that you are addressing them. I find that trying to be as personal as possible helps a lot.
Do you find yourself looking out at the congregation as they come in, settle, and just sort of do that look around? My father taught me a long time ago that if you're a gifted speaker, you look above, just above, the tops of their heads. And you look at 3 points in the room, one to the left, one to the middle, and one to the right. And by looking just above their heads, it appears that you're looking into each and every one of their eyes.
It's very good.
And I think it works.
I would agree with you. It does. I try to do that. I really do. And I think it helps a lot.
Do you find that people at church during Mass avoid eye contact sometimes with the priest?
Well, there's so many people that come for different reasons, okay? They come and they bring a lot of their own burdens with them. Some are mourning. Some are confused. Some are depressed. So they come to the Mass to get help. You know, yesterday in the Gospel, once again, Jesus encounters a demented individual. And the demented individual says, I know who you are. You are the Son of God. Leave me alone. And when you analyze it, what that person was saying, I need your help. Please help me. If you read between the lines. So when the people come to church and they are depressed, they are hurting, they are mourning, and whatever the case might be, they're looking for whatever little help they can have. Now, in some cases, that means that they don't want to look around, they don't want to sing, they want to put their heads down, and they just want to commune directly with God, if you want. Others, on the other hand, take part of every aspect of the liturgy, sing every word of every hymn. Yeah. They do all of those things. Huh? But then there are others because, as I say, everybody brings their own needs with them when they come to church.
Is there a chance to have some humor at Mass?
Oh, I think so, yeah.
Do you bring some humor to
I try, yeah.
How do you try and bring humor to a Mass?
Well, I sometimes will take things that are in context. You try to pick out something that's going on, and there's nothing wrong with a little bit of laughter at times. Huh? It shakes us into a little bit of reality, too, I think, and it's good, really. I have my own idiosyncrasies. I don't doubt that. I have a ritual. Good morning and welcome, or may the peace of Christ be with you. I see people in the congregation doing.
And with you, Father.
Yes,
as opposed
yes,
to just going,
yes.
And with you, Father.
Yes.
People stick around after Mass, and are you obliged then to sort of thank them for coming?
I always tell them, you were nourished with the body and blood of Christ.
Right.
You were nourished with the Word.
Yeah.
Now go out of those doors and put it into practice. The Mass is supposed to be a celebration. There's no question. It's kind of interesting because many of these other rites...
Well, let me just do this real
yes.
quickly. How many Masses a week would you say you say? Pardon the redundancy.
Yeah, if you're considering the weekends, okay?
Yeah.
Let's just say 3, 4, 5. Maybe 6 or 7.
Okay, so you're retired and you're saying 7 Masses.
Yes.
All right. And it's a labor of love, yes?
If I don't say Mass, I feel something is missing.
Uh-huh.
I really look forward to it. Maybe I like the interaction with the people. I like the idea that I am forced to really think about it the night before. So it keeps me on my toes theologically. And so if you do this through the years, the another thing I do is I don't ever keep those daily homilies because it forces me to redo them whenever the time comes. In the church we have that 3-year cycle. Right now we're in cycle B. Uh-huh. And so that...
the ordinary season, yeah.
Ordinary season, but it's cycle B. So the thing is this, that if you keep those homilies, it's going to be the same ones every 2 years for the weekdays. Sunday Masses, it's going to be every 3 years. Here's what I want to say about that. It's nothing wrong with using those same homilies as long as you take the time to adapt them to your present situation. And this is what causes, I think, a little bit of work the night before, more than a little bit of work, is to try to rethink the readings of the day and see what's the best way of adapting them to the people to whom you're speaking.
How much time do you spend on a homily?
Well, it depends. If it's a Sunday homily, it's going to be a couple of days. I
Really?
mean,
Wow.
some people say, well, I don't mean full days, you know what I mean? You give it some thought and so on. If something grasps you, you try to expand on that one particular thing, see? I'm not going to go to church and be unprepared.
On the days that you don't say Mass in a chapel, a church, or a cathedral, or a shrine, do you say Mass at home?
No, there were two public prayers. Oh, that's another thing we could discuss sometime. But there were two public prayers.
Oh, you did it again. We can discuss sometime. Okay, well, there's our next podcast.
No, but I was going to say there's so many different forms of prayer. Mass is probably the most intimate because of what I tried to explain before. What happens at Mass is that you're hearing the Word, so you're being nourished by the Word, and you're receiving the body and blood of Christ. You're being nourished that way. So you're being nourished in two ways to beef you up so that when you go out the doors, you could put into practice what you've been fed. However, there are other prayers that are private prayers. The Rosary, which we discussed before.
Yes.
Meditation. I always say this.
You're a big fan of meditation.
Yeah, and I think it's important. I think what you have to do is find a little bit of time during the day. And in the beginning, it could just be 3 minutes. It doesn't have to be long. 3 minutes will be an eternity for some people. But just to sit there and just try to maybe pick up a little piece of scripture. See how it relates to your life. And do that all mentally. Mental prayer, basically. So you have what's called meditation. The 3 minutes, if you do it regularly, if you find a special space in your house, in your garden, in your walkway, whatever, you make that a regular event, in about less than a year, the 3 minutes will become 30 minutes. But then the other is the office of the church. It's called a public prayer because it prays for the whole world, so not just by myself. The office, of course, is divided into different hours of the day. You have matins, which is in the morning. You have the prayer of the day, usually in the afternoon. You have evening prayer, and then you have vespers at night, right before you go to bed.
And all of this is the connectivity, if you will, of the Mass and saying the Mass. I have a final question for you. Reconciliation. How does it occur?
Well, reconciliation basically is, in layman's terms, I say it's a time for us to make up with God. We've been away from God. We've turned our back towards Him, whereas God keeps His arms open and waiting for us always. And when we decide to go back to Him so that we could receive His full embrace, and we could really make up, if you want, that's reconciliation. Maybe in the old days it used to be called confession, but the whole idea is things are back to what they're supposed to be. Whenever I sin, I miss the mark. I'm supposed to be this way, and somehow I miss the mark. So in order to come back to where I'm supposed to be, I need reconciliation. I need the Lord to embrace me so that we could be one again. And basically, it's sin is another way of putting it might be turning our back to God.
Mm-hmm.
Reconciliation it's not just a matter of being forgiven. It's also a matter of repairing what has been done wrong. So that, we were talking about David and Bathsheba earlier. Well, he committed adultery. David did. Well, the sin, as I said, had ripple effect. But now he's going to have to work doubly hard for him to regain the trust of the people that have been scandalized by all of this. And also his relationship with God, so that he could repair that. And so repairing things takes a lot more time than we think.
Is reconciliation a regular part of your job?
Oh, yes. For example, what we've done now in the church is that there's always the idea of private confession. If you were to go to St. Hugo the Hills, you would have full scale 1 hour and a half every Saturday, even today, 1 hour and a half of confessions. People online waiting to go one by one by one. When I was a kid, every Saturday you would go to confession.
Yeah.
And what
Yep.
was interesting is the line for confession was all around the block, okay, waiting to get in to confess your sins. And particularly as teenagers, you can imagine what goes through their minds.
Right.
Thank God I'm free. If I die now, tonight, I'm free. It was a relief. It was a wonderful thing because they knew that whatever is said in confession can never be repeated. Well, now you have those same lines, but they're around the psychologist's office where you have to pay $150 because... And then you can never really be assured that it's not going to be repeated, especially to the guy's wife or husband. But anyway, so they're paying.
I didn't see that coming.
So anyways, so what I'm getting at is this, that the church has tried to make it as easy as possible. So what they do now, twice a year, they have a reconciliation service. So at Christmas, sometime during Advent, Easter, sometimes during Lent. The church, every church has a penitential service. You go at 7 o'clock at night. They have readings. They have a public examination of conscience. And then you're asked if you have committed a very, very serious sin. You're asked to go to the priest at another time. But for now, just mention some things that you want to be forgiven for. And so it's expediting the whole situation. So after you hear the readings, after the priest gives a homily, after you have an examination of conscience, after people say the act of contrition together in unison, then they go to confession individually, and it's a very quick confession. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned, and the priest just gives absolution. Matter of fact, in some cases, they even suggest some penances that you could do. Go visit a sick friend, or go visit somebody in the nursing home. It would be a general type of penance that you would be given.
When I talk to certain people about doing a podcast with a priest, and I come from the ranks of rock and roll, and they go, I was raised a Catholic, but I certainly don't practice it. I'm not a practicing Catholic. Why? Are you? In other words, I guess I'm disturbed by the fact that people who were raised Catholic, but
They're ashamed.
I have friends that were raised Catholic, and as you just said, they are ashamed. And then all of a sudden, somebody really, really strong and powerful in their life, maybe a musician, a politician, or it could just be a really good friend, turns out to be a practicing, powerful Catholic. And all of a sudden, oh,
I'm a Catholic.
It's like, so am I. Yeah.
Yes.
You find that on occasion, do you?
Of course you do.
Yeah. Do you say you're either all in or all out, or can you say, stay with it, keep thinking about it?
I like that. Francis keeps getting criticized because people think he's too liberal. But if you analyze what he's saying, it doesn't mean that he's so liberal. For example, you know what he just recently did? You probably already know, but he married this couple on a plane.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Well, you can imagine the canon lawyers all fluffing their wings. How could he possibly be doing that? He's the Pope. He can't do that. He's not allowed to do that. Well, Francis explained, first of all, this couple were going through what we call today a convalidation. In other words, they were married, but not in the church. And since they wanted to be married in the church, something happened, whether it be scheduling or something. They were deprived of being able to do that. So now they're on the plane. They're both attendants. And so they asked Francis if he would consider that. And he graciously said, of course. And so he did that. So it was not like this was a first-time marriage. This couple was already married. They already had permission. They already had counseling so that they were not going into this blind. So he marries them on the plane. Well, technically, that's something you can't do. Priests can't do that, especially if they don't know them and so on and so forth.
Excuse me for interrupting. I believe Pope Francis can.
Yes, of course. And he did. Okay. And he did. I guess what I'm saying is he's a very understanding individual, but he does push the envelope a little bit. Huh? Maybe a lot of the other popes wouldn't dare go near something like that,
right,
because they would be afraid of what the media would do with that and so on. When you said to me that, what brought that to mind is what you said before. I'm a Catholic. I'm not saying this to you, but you probably know me, and you know that I only go to church once a month. I try to contribute what I can, but I'm a Catholic. I consider myself a Catholic. Now, there would be some people that would say absolutely not. They can't be Catholic. How can they be Catholic? They're not going to Mass every Sunday. They're not. Well, you want to turn them off completely and say, get out of here. You're not one of us. Look at your family members, huh? Everybody has family members, okay? You've got one that's likes to drink too much. You've got another one who likes to play the field a lot. You have another one that's very stable. So you have all of this stuff, you know what I mean? And the Catholic Church is a family. And so you've got all sorts of Catholics, okay?
Indeed we do. I think you just looked at my family tree.
No. Well, look at Jesus' family tree, by the way. Go ahead.
Well, we'll end with that because of the fact that I just enjoy the fact that we can get together, discuss, find a topic, and kind of run with it. We don't necessarily feel like we have to just stay on point and be totally serious all the time about all things. You do a wonderful job of putting it all together, and as a wise person once said, putting a bow on it. I want to thank you for that. Do you have any final thoughts for today? This is, in fact, just random thoughts with Father Joe Grimaldi. What do you have for me?
Here's what I want to say is I could not possibly do what I do if it weren't for you.
No.
You certainly know how to ask the right questions. You certainly know when and how to bring up the right topics. And so it makes it easy for me to respond. So I thank you.
You're a tough out, as the baseball players would say. I throw a lot of things at you. I text you and say, I want to throw this at you, I want to throw that at you. You just show up, listen, and we chat. So I want to thank you for that, for another day. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Thank you. This is Father Joe Grimaldi, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe Podcast.